continue making that very juicy breakfast. We have Professor Jacqueline Odwol, nominated MP, Caleb Kositani, MP Soi, Kimani Wamatangi, Senator Kiambu, and Mohamed Faki, Senator Mombasa County. I want to give you guys about a minute each to make your final submissions, but because of time, I need to also mention this one headline that I'm sure is one of the biggest talking points, and it has to do with Raila Odinga's security. And you've seen even on Citizen TV, that story is on Citizen TV as well. CS Fred Matiang'i says they will not return Raila Odinga's security, and he went on to say, and if I may quote him, I had one politician say they will return the police officers, or they call for mass action. They can proceed and call for mass action. Okay, but the one I'm looking for, the quote is this: why should we give you 20 police officers to loiter from press conference to another press conference, from hotel to hotel, when they are needed elsewhere? Why should you carry around a whole platoon of police officers to go and commit a crime, to evict constitutional office holders? That is CS Fred Matiang'i justifying the reason why the security of some of the NASA principals was withdrawn. As you give your final submissions, you could comment on that as well. Of course, we'll give Professor Jacqueline Odwol the final slot for this. Let's start with Senator Wamatangi.
Oh, thank you. I think, if I remember well, there was a time the Prime Minister had made a request for beefed up security, and I think that time he was asking for 50 police officers. Well, it has been said by many of us, and including myself, why would one person, when Kenyans are dying, even in Kondele, in some of the slums of Kisumu, in Mathare here, Kibera, where there is insecurity, why would one Kenyan be asking to have actually 50 police officers to guard him? So I think it's really a non-issue. Nobody wants to either kill Raila or anyone. If that was to happen, it would have happened when he didn't have that security, not when he has now. So I think we have to sober up. But let me make my final comment by saying that we have an election on the 26th. We need peace in this country, but most of all is we need clarity in law to ensure that not only this time but subsequently that elections can be held, they can be declared in good time. Fred, let me mourn in quotes with most of the Kenyans, because Kenyans are suffering. I wish you talked to business people now in this city. You'll be surprised. Businesses have suffered big time because of the scenario we're in. If you look at the uncertainty, and I have a girl who is a candidate this year in KCPA, and you know, I've been saying as a parent how happy I would have been if my daughter was given all the freedom to prepare her mind and be at peace when she goes to sit for exams. You know, she'll be sitting for exams just immediately after an election, and we are certain, even as they read and study. I mean, this is something that this country must avoid in the future. So when we talk about reforming law, ensuring that we have put in place the right people,
a change in
definitely, I mean, that should even be one of the possibilities. So I wish Kenyans a very good week. Let's sit down, let's be peaceful, let's ensure that we plan to have a good election.
Okay. Senator Mohamed Faki.
Yes. First of all, we have seen that the government is bullish, intimidating, and not willing to sit down and discuss with NASA. The withdrawal of the security of the Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, the arrest and subsequent rearrest of Honorable Babwa yesterday, that shows power. And this is not the time to be bullish and exercise such power, because the country needs some form of healing and reconciliation just after the general election, which was very partisan. So what we are seeing is a tendency of being dictatorship, because whatever Matiang'i is saying should be saying from the point of view of the government. Yeah, and therefore those are issues that will have a bearing on the elections on the 26th of October. What we are saying is this, that both houses have senior leaders, politicians, who can come together in a bipartisan committee to come and cool the tempers. Because at the moment business is bad because of the rhetoric, most of it coming from Jubilee. Because immediately the Supreme Court gave its decision, the President was the first to classify the court as Wakoras, and that doesn't build confidence. It is in the interest of Kenya to have a credible election body, and that buck stops with the President. They cannot defend the Chilobas and the others simply because they had given a decision in his favor. So what we are saying is that we need a committee of senior people. In fact, in the Senate, we have Amos Wako, we have Yusuf Haji, we have former PS Mahmoud. Those are senior politicians, Professor Samongeri, seasoned diplomat. They can come together with colleagues from the National Assembly to come and form a bipartisan committee which can discuss these issues in a sober atmosphere.
Okay. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Bwana Caleb Costello.
Well, I think you've touched on one or two things that I'd like to mention on. One is the threat by the NASA leadership, or rather Raila Odinga, on boycott of Safaricom. When the Swahili saying,
although he did not mention
he did not mention, but yes, he was heading there, and we know he was heading there. They say siku ya nyani kufa miti yote uteleza, and Raila's time has come to an end, especially in terms of trying to galvanize the country in a certain way. I think he should actually face this election, denounce violence. That's one demand, that irreducible minimum from Jubilee from him, is that he should denounce violence and accept that. I mean, I saw an interview where he was asked, are you prepared to accept results? He says, if I lose fairly. Losing fairly for Raila is him winning. It's not about him. He's never lost fairly in any election.
1997 he lost fairly.
We really need this country to move forward. We need to respect institutions. And when we see we have gotten to the stage whereby we're getting into private businesses and starting to blame them for our loss in election. Elections in Kenya are won by a number of votes you garner, not by the number of corporations that support you or anything. So we want to tell the NASA family that please, we need this country to move forward. Our businessmen are crying, the country is bleeding, we're not collecting enough revenue. We need the country to move. The second thing about what is going to happen in Parliament today, one of the things that is going to come up is a supplementary budget, because we need to authorize Treasury to fund this election. We hope, and we're happy because at least NASA have realized that Parliament is in full session, is legally in session. They have been boycotting as they were instructed. I'm sure they will come in today, and they were in yesterday. We had a vote and they saw what the tyranny of numbers can do, and that is going to be the way to do things in Parliament. They've got to respect the decision of the majority.
No apologies.
They will have the floor to, no apologies at all.
Yeah.
They will have, the only apology is you go back to the people, and we go, then it will have to happen in 2022. We go back to the people, and if they feel that Jubilee didn't perform with their tyranny, let them give the tyranny to whoever will be there at that time. But for now, we're going to use our tyranny to govern the country and to do the affairs and make sure that the Jubilee manifesto is seen to have been done within these 5 years.
Okay. Finally, Professor Jacqueline Odwal.
Thank you very much, Fred. As I start, I want to sort of remind my distinguished colleagues, senators, that as a parliamentarian, the key protocol and code of engagement is that you do not anticipate what somebody is going to say or is going to do. So I think I would like that perhaps this obsession with every time anticipating whether NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga is going to go to elections or not, is going to go to, I would like to request that we don't take that up. And then coming to the much more critical issue at this particular time in our country, I would like for all Kenyans who are law-abiding and who have been part of a journey that culminated on the 2010 Constitution to stand up for their rights, and to be aware that intimidation, impunity, tribalism, corruption can undermine not just peace and development, but can indeed have a corrosive effect on not only communities, on business, on indeed the day-to-day running of a country. And I know as I speak today, all Kenyans who are law-abiding and all Kenyans who have forever been challenged by these key questions of elections day in, day out, would agree with me that we really must remember that when you have impunity, when you have tribalism, when you have corruption, when you have partisan interests codified into law at the political level, you have just lost the country. And I know as I speak, because I now happen to be the one who is the National Assembly, I am aware that you can have tyranny of numbers, but I am aware that when you are in a country such as Kenya, where we have seen all the way from 2002, where we have seen throughout, even as we looked at IEBC, that I want to call on all the members of the National Assembly. And I want to particular to look to members who are NASA and help them to remember the days, the KANU days, when we had just about 9 members in the opposition, but they were able, if we remember Shikuku, if we stand and we remember Serone, if we remember Chelgat Temtai, I want to thank Kenyans. And I want to ask particularly the National Assembly members that they need to stand up. And I really want, as I close, to remind in a very, very humble way, C.S. Matiang'i, that giving Honorable Raila Odinga security is not a favor. And what we would like to do, if we are law-abiding, then let us look to the law and let us ensure that we follow it. But we want to ensure that the people of Kenya will not be taken back. We had said yote yawezekana. We were not dealing with an individual. We were dealing with principles. We were dealing with intimidation. We were dealing with people who were not following the rule of law. I thank God that I happen to be in the National Assembly at a point when we will pick the mantle and we will rise to claim Kenya back.
Yes, indeed, the National Assembly has a very special sitting this morning where those amendments to the electoral laws will be introduced. Thank you so much, Professor Jacqueline Odwal, nominated MP, Caleb Kostani, MP Soy, Kimani Wamatangi, Senator Kiambu, and Mohamed Faki, Senator Mombasa County, helping us look at the headlines this morning. Remember, Power Breakfast is still the hashtag to use up until 9 a.m. Chef Ali Mandri is in the house cooking up some juicy breakfast. There's also that very interesting interview to do with the World Heart Day, which is being marked tomorrow. There's a special marathon coming up. My name is Freddie Nimuli. Thank you, my panel.